Hey everybody, welcome to the Woodruff Cast. Shout out to everybody that is joining me for this episode. My guest today will be myself. It sounds so crazy saying that. Um, and today, oh, also, I want to thank all my paid subscribers, all of you watching this for free. Oh, a thank you to my paid subscribers because if they weren't paying, you wouldn't be seeing this. Consider taking out a subscription to my newsletter. A lot of great things upcoming in the month of May, where I will be doing get-togethers with my paid subscribers and Zoom calls and still working out the details on that. But I have some great casts that are scheduled for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Anyway, oh my God, I want to. This is being done very on the fly. My friend Bill Sugani, who's actually a former boyfriend of mine who lives in Japan, alerted me to an astrologer on YouTube that was doing close analysis of Trump's chart. And that inspired me to take a look myself and see what the fuck is happening. Children of the Corn, strap yourself in. I've put the tri wheel below. In the center is the birth chart for the United States. The middle wheel is the natal chart for Donald Trump, who is the president presently. The outer wheel are the transits for today, which happens to be May 1st, 2025. So, real simplistic astrology here. I think you guys know I do not go in for solar arcs. I don't work with progressions. I don't work with asteroids. I don't work with galactic centers. I don't work with midpoints. I don't work with non-existent Uranian planets. I'm very meat and potatoes type of dude. And I think we all can benefit by keeping astrology focused on basics, which is much more exciting than all of the phantasmagorical elements that come in with things like progressions, which are supposed to equal 1 day of birth equals 1 year of life. Really? Anyway, let's look at the elephant in the room in this chart, which would be Jupiter and Gemini, which has to do with kind of an exuberance and a little bit reckless expression of the Gemini function, which is to bring as many variables as possible into an equation and then hopefully using mental acuity, figure out what is going to work best in solving a particular problem or creating a book or a mode of communication. What's the most engaging, mercurial way that that can happen? That's kind of the Gemini function or style. So this Jupiter Gemini transit touches off the Uranus North Node Sun in Gemini confluence in Donald Trump's chart, which plays into the United States Mars in Gemini. Now, my friend Nick Dagan Best made this connection between the US um, Mars in Gemini with Donald Trump's sun Uranus conjunction in Gemini. And with his prescience, he saw that as being a shoe-in for Trump after, uh, or even before 2016. I think when Trump descended that golden elevator and like a demon released from the bowels of hell entered each of our lives. And that would be very Gemini. Instead of coming up from the bottom, it's going from the top down on that escalator. So the shorthand reading for this as Trump impacts our country and the president or king or any ruler of a country or nation or state is the figurehead, is the archetypal paternal image that the country is tied up with for good or ill. So I think we can all agree that since he was inaugurated in January and the slew of the executive orders just streamed out of his office, each one was more unhinged and cacophonous than the prior one. And this has been this crescendo that's been building with Jupiter transiting this part of Trump's chart and really emboldening him. Whenever Jupiter transits anywhere in our chart, we feel like we've got a bit of carte blanche there. This explains the situation with Trump now and the country, especially our legal system, is beleaguered by this because there are lawsuits after lawsuits after lawsuits, which within the Steve Bannon school of thought is a very good thing with his dictum of flood the zone with shit. Of course, he's talking more about the media and this confusion of what's true, what's fake news, what's this or that. But I apply that as well in an extended way to the judicial system in the US, which is collapsing under all of these edicts coming from the Trump administration. Another iteration of this Jupiter conjunction and setting off the Sun Uranus in Trump's chart is the fact that Saturn is continuing to move towards Trump's midheaven in Gemini. Saturn gains strength as it's moving towards a domain that it is comfortable with, which would be the midheaven, which kind of has a Capricornian flavor to it, though houses and signs are different. Keep that in mind. But there is this thing of reaching a goal, reaching a height, reaching a place of a high stature, which is very appealing to the Saturn vibe for all the reasons that we associate with the qualities Saturn carries. So anyone can look at their chart and figure out where Saturn is by transit. And I just did a post on this on Substack. Um, when Saturn is moving up the wheel, there's a sense that one is getting like push and lift from the culture. And in this sense, it's kind of disheartening unless you're a MAGA, though I think they're actually starting to feel the burn a little bit now. If they can let that truth in and stop watching Fox News. And in fact, when Harris was running against Trump, um, I was concerned being an independent socialist, I guess, Democrat. I don't know what that is anymore nowadays. But Harris was running with Saturn already peaking at her midheaven. And Of course, Trump's was still ascending, ascending, ascending. And I just thought, fuck, as much as I was rooting for her and as much as I question the actual validity of the election, as I've told friends, it's very rare for every swing state to go to a candidate. I think it's only happened once or twice in the country's history. And I guess I'm one of those, conspiracy goons now. I really have questioned Trump's victory on election day. Anyway, that said, and having outed myself, let's continue here. Okay, so Trump is many, many things. And one of the things that I do appreciate about him is that, and I guess this is the writer in me that does fiction, is that there is so much crazy ass mayhem generated by him. We need to ask ourselves what the fuck is going on. It forces us, and this is a very Gemini Sun Uranus kind of thing. If this is going on around, think of a Pigpen in the Peanuts comic strip. Remember the flies and swirling miasmic uh, dust cloud around him. So when shit like that's happening with someone, and by extension going into the country as a whole, there's nowhere to really anchor oneself, you know. I mean, think about all the years you've lived, you've gotten up in the morning and you weren't thinking about Donald Trump, or you weren't thinking about Bill Clinton, or you weren't thinking about Bush or whatever. I mean, sure, you would hear the news and Clinton got a blowjob in the White House and, you know, but there was not this fervid mania. Like I got up to piss the other night, and I'm walking to my bathroom. It's fucking 3 a.m. or something, kind of feeling my way in there. I don't want a lot of lights on because I want to go right back to bed. When you get older, the guys listening to this, you'll know what I mean because the prostate does its own little thing about awakening you. TMI. And so I'm going in there and I realize I'm thinking about Trump, getting ready to piss. And I thought, this is, you need to pay attention to this, Frederick, because, and this circles back to my point here, when there is no way to anchor oneself to the external reality because it is such a miasma, which is like another facet of Maya, the world of illusion. And it's interesting, the word Maya actually means measurement. And this is why in Hindi religion, they see measurement as a way of actually creating a false world because it gives people this idea that things can be measured and thus are real. And of course, the scientific part of us, we anchor ourselves to that. But their idea is that, really? This is an arbitrary set of numbers that were fixed up to like measure things. And then suddenly everybody's like living by, these rules. But when we can't find our measurement, we can't orient, but it forces one to turn and look at his or herself and to see what's real here. What what is real, what has substantiality, what is connected to something much, much larger than this stage set and this kind of reality TV show that we're living in now. Yes, it's very real on one level, but when things become so locked into the theater of the absurd, it does force one to come back to what is germane and true to his or her nature. So that is the beauty of Trump that is to be given thanks towards. So going back to the chart, I've put another chart down there, which is just Trump's natal with transits. And the one upcoming transit that is alarming to me, and I'm not saying this from like a clickbait sort of way, it's something that's been uppermost in my mind when I have been considering how Jupiter and Neptune have been a predominant pair in our affairs lately. First of all, going back to Elon Musk, who has a Jupiter, uh, Saturn, I'm sorry, Jupiter Neptune conjunction in his chart that is opposite Saturn, which gives him this, at least in the legendary status of his own mind, image as being a visionary. There's a bit of a megalomania side to that particular complex. And I'm bringing that up because as Neptune and Saturn conjunct very soon in Aries, this will trigger off Trump's Neptune Jupiter situation in Libra. I mean, technically, they're not conjunct, but to be honest, I look at things as one planet moving into another sign. And if there's a sign opposite that, I just start seeing the tension there. Of course, the more exact the opposition or conjunction or square is, I think the more emphatic it is. But my point with this particular transit is, Trump has jokingly been intimating about having a royal or king-like status, at least with his Leo ascendant, within his Leo ascendant imagination. And this is an actual situation for Leo rising individuals, especially Leo ascendant like Trump, where Mars is there fueling it and being in the 12th house. He doesn't even actually see how things are spontaneously erupting out of this Leo ascendant of his. But there is deep, deep within the person, this archetypal, I don't know what you could call it, memory or historical lineage of some kind of or some notion of royalty, which we associate with that sign. And it does, when it goes unhinged, it becomes a kind of Messiah complex, uh, megalomania complex. And with the upcoming opposition from Saturn, especially, though Neptune's there too, adding to the fuckery, Saturn coming by conjunction or opposition to the outer planets, there's a compulsion within the person to materialize what is essentially something that is transcendental and really beyond the earthly purview that we think of as, well, this is what it's like to be human. These are the limitations, Saturn. These are the limitations that we live within. And these other things are fantasies, or like with Uranus, like these ideals of perfection, which can never take place within human beings. And then you get to the level of Pluto, where it's sort of coming head to head with the ultimate mystery. And as I've said many, many times, many, many people have died. No one has come back and told us what happens there. So this is what I mean by the transcendental or transpersonal. things with the outer planets. Saturn gets involved, like it's going to do with Trump over the next year and a half. And this idea that this kind of a royal, kingly, uh, megalomaniacal uh, self status starts to establish more and more within Trump. I find that kind of alarming, especially when you look at, for the collective, what the Saturn Neptune Aries conjunction connotes, which at a very primitive level is the love of war and getting behind these causes that give the more primitive, martial qualities of human beings, a reason to have an outlet. Um, and there's no greater one than war. So the last thing I want to talk about involves the, again, Saturn, Neptune, Aries conjunction this year, perfecting next year. If you look at the chart below, at the nadir of the chart for the United States, there's the conjunction occurring exactly on that point. Now, the cusp of the fourth house is, to me, it has like two different levels to it. One relates to the paternal. So in this case, Uncle Sam, you could say. Whereas the midheaven relates to the maternal or lineage for each of us or for the country. And then the other relates to the being the midnight point of the chart, the most mysterious point where one day dies and then it gives birth to a new day after midnight. The way I interpret this Saturn Neptune conjuncting that part of the US chart is there's something in the collective that is finding it necessary to connect up with the realization that the nation is dead. And I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, whatever. This is something, given the Neptune nature and then Saturn's emphaticness of making it tangible, making it something realized, not just fantasized, occurring as it does on this point of the nation's chart. For some reason, by necessity, I don't know what you want to call it, there's a deep, painful Saturn acknowledgement of this dissolution, Neptune, of we've reached the end, we've hit the bottom of the well. Make of that what you will. Of course, things are never ending within cycles. So, in one sense, we have this death that is being worshipped, Neptune, death, Saturn, fourth house cusp. But then at the same time, the stirrings for what follows are also, the seeds of that are there. The challenge is that we have, as individuals, short lifespans when you look at, the entire larger arc of time. So for many of us, we're needing to make peace as Americans with living through this particular kind of closure. And what does that do for the individual when they are faced with a conclusion like this? And this is really, for a nation, one of the important things about the transit is that the Neptunian part of it lets us dissolve out and away from nationalism because Neptune works to remind each of us that we are deeply mystically connected to a whole, that it really is about the globe that we're on. And then that globe is within a solar system, and that solar system is within a universe, which is in a set of galaxies. And so it goes. That's the beauty of the Neptunian vision. So, as you're going through all this angst about the country and the horrors of MAGA or the wonders of MAGA, because I'm telling you, they're both a particular type of delusion when viewed through the lens of Maya, let's say. So, as you're going through all that, and this is, I keep telling my clients this, especially my older clients, go explore something like the Tao, because the Tao, when you get what it's saying, will put you right in the spot you need to be sitting in right now. There's nothing you have to believe in. There's no dictum you have to follow. There's no meditations, postures that you need to get into or find a teacher or do this or that. It's you, your own authority, and that authority's relationship to the universe that we are all abiding in. Okay, everybody, that is it. Comments below. I will talk to you all later. Bye bye.